Hello, I'm your host, Effie Pilarino, and today I have with us a wonderful leader, a female leader from Switzerland, Kamales Lardi. Welcome, Kamales.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
I mean, with Kamales, I think we met about 5 years ago. Our first collaborative sort of venture was being published in the Valtech book by Wiley with
Yes,
Susan Chisti. I mean, that
exactly.
seems like, ages ago, with the COVID and everything, and fintech having scaled and changed from the war of fintechs against banks and so on. Those were the mantras of, I would say, 2015 until 2017, 18, and then it started changing. I mean, Kamales, you've been involved with the F10 accelerator, one of our best accelerators here in Switzerland. You have been involved in leadership roles. One to mention, you were on the board of the Crypto Valley Association. Not many women have dared to even put a candidacy if you want. I know that you are on the Forbes Business Council, and right now you are in a new role. I must congratulate you as the country managing director of Valtech. So, you've been in digital transformation. You have a passion for women and leadership, and we have lots to discuss. Plus your upcoming book that I will keep the theme and the title towards the end for the juicy part. Come on, tell us, what did I miss and from your journey and how you have come today to this point?
Well, first I have to say thank you for having me and for that wonderful introduction. It's always a pleasure to speak to you because we have such synergies on the topic. If there's one thing I would like to add to what you mentioned in the introduction, it would be the fact that most people don't know that I actually started my career off as a coder. So my basic degree is in computing and information systems, where I learned, for the very first time about technology. This was in 96, 90 to 99. And, back then technology was still very, very rudimentary, right, in the sense of coding and compared to what we have today. And so I think this has given me a very solid background in terms of understanding core technologies and also I think, unique opportunity that, some of us feel this great pleasure of having to observe the developments of technology over the last 2 decades. It's so rapidly developed in the last, I would say 10 years. And the ability for us to do creative things, innovative things, and the ability to disrupt industries has just become so overwhelming. And I think many organizations do struggle with that. So this is something that I'm very passionate about when I talk about digital transformation or emerging tech. It's all about the fact, what can we transform? What can we disrupt? And it's a very optimistic view of the future of technology in business as well.
Wonderful. I mean, I would have never guessed that you were a coder, and that is a wonderful example of how more often women, I think, don't blow their trumpet. We have stereotypes, and we look at people and assume rather their background and the angle that they're coming. And we're not right. I'm positively surprised with your background. I mean, I know that you have done work through your own consultancy in financial services. Let's start a bit discussing your take on the digital mindset in financial services. Wherever you want to share with us, whether it's now, a bit of the journey that you have seen, and your thoughts on that, because we all know that the mindset is core to what is happening.
I think the best place to probably start, because we do hear this term quite often, digital mindset, and we do hear as well executives and business leaders as well as companies claim to have this mindset or claim to want to achieve this mindset. And I think a good place to start is probably to define what exactly this means. And I can share with you a definition that resonates well with me and has resonated with the people that I advise in the business area. It does involve really having an abundance mindset. And what I mean by abundance mindset is having a view of the capabilities of technology to break our current physical boundaries, our current business boundaries as well. So we have established rules and assumptions around how businesses run, how organizations should run, how we should be engaging with our customers, what kind of products and services should be in the market. All of these elements, I think exponential technologies, emerging technologies have really broken the boundaries of these types of kind of assumptions that we make in business. And a digital mindset, for me, the first and foremost element is being able to understand that these physical boundaries that used to make a big impact in the business environment, that used to limit how companies operate, these are becoming less and less valid, and they are being broken on a day-to-day basis. So if you consider the fact that traditionally an organization would be limited by the physical environment that they're in, the physical location, the geographic location, today those boundaries don't exist anymore. On day one of business, you have companies that are able to access the global marketplace simply because they have access to digital platforms and online channels. You have companies that are crossing the boundaries between industries, right? So tech companies that are serving up financial services and insurance type products and services to their customer base. I mean, 10 years ago, this would be a rare occurrence. Today, this is a typical occurrence for most large technology companies. We're also seeing smaller fintechs that are penetrating the market and basically becoming real competitions for the large, big banks and big financial institutions, simply because they're able to very quickly understand the digital native customer, and they're able to provide these kind of hyper-personalized and seamless interaction points, mobile-based technology that allows financial services to be offered in a very rapid way to customers across multiple regions. And I think this has created a new mindset, a mindset where business leaders and companies need to think beyond their current industry environment, think beyond what they currently offer as value propositions to the customers, and really having a strong understanding for what do these technologies bring? What are they, right? So we do see a lot of examples in the market where companies, even big financial institutions saying, you know, we're implementing blockchain, we're going on the Metaverse and things like this. But what does that really mean? Are we going into this space as kind of a marketing element to demonstrate that these brands can be innovative as well? Or are they truly understanding the capabilities and the journeys that these technologies are on, and what kind of products and services could be offered to customers, not just today, but 5-10 years down the line? I think these are elements that bring about a true digital mindset, you know, the ability to think beyond your current physical environment and your current business environment as well.
Basically to challenge your business model and the way you do business. And who you're serving and what you're serving. I guess it's like rethinking everything in an odd way, right?
It is, and I think that's where we need to find kind of a balance in terms of rethinking. It's not about throwing out decades of things that, you know, knowledge, expertise, infrastructure capabilities that have been built, but it's about how can we leverage these things and still innovate for the future based on the new technologies. A question I like to ask a lot of times when I'm speaking to C-level executives and when I'm in, you know, these big organizations, what would your organization look like if you were building it from scratch today? Would you have built it in the same way that, you know, UBS or Credit Suisse or, you know, any of the big banks were built when they were originated? Would you still utilize the same thinking? Would you still build it in the same way? Today, considering that we have such a wide range of technologies, capabilities, and different expertise and skill sets, the way you would build up these organizations would look completely different. And this is a way to trigger this digital mindset to help people think outside of the box, outside of their current environment and space. And we're seeing the mindsets look very different across different regions as well. So, for example, in Europe, I find a lot of my conversations tend to focus on how things have always been done and how, our customers want our interactions and touch points and products and services to look a certain way because it's been this way for decades. We are, the experts in the industry. And so this is how our organization structure should be and so on. And then if you go into other regions, so I've had clients in the African region, in Asia and in the Middle East. In those regions, for example, in Africa and Asia, conversations tend to be more around the smaller problems of each individual person. So the problems that we tackle would be around a farmer who is not able to get crop insurance because he doesn't have access to traditional financial services, or parents who would like their kids to get further education and would need to save up, but don't know what's the best way to do that because, for them, access to a bank account could be a challenge. So the types of issues that are being dealt with in those regions are different. And so you're seeing companies or fintechs come up that are focused on these micro issues and zooming in on those areas and being very innovative in the services and products that they offer in those areas. Whereas what we're seeing in more developed regions like in the Middle East and Europe is thinking around or the challenge of thinking beyond the current environment. How can we leverage what we've built over the last few decades and then innovate on that? And this means breaking mindsets. It means bringing in new ways of engaging with your customers, understanding your customers in a different way. I mean, a question that I always ask organizations, you have access to so much data today, information and knowledge about each individual customer. And you have systems, AI-based systems, that can make sense of these data points and information. Why are we not using it in a better way? Why do we not see these hyper-personalized services coming towards us as financial services customers? And as us, as women, if I think about the struggles I've had just to get access to wealth management facilities, traditional wealth management in our region, I'm sorry to say this, I'm a very outspoken person, as you know. They'd like to speak to my husband. They typically don't speak to me, right? So I'm not their target audience. And somehow there's a presumption that the women deal with finances differently than the men. And most times in households, women do manage the finances, and they are the people that you need to be speaking to as financial service providers. So I think these are challenges that we are facing in terms of mindset across different regions based on what I've explored.
Very, very interesting, this distinction. I mean, as you're speaking, I was thinking about, this idea that big tech companies will, disrupt financial services. And the question is, do you really believe that banks should be run like tech companies? And what does that really look like?
That's a really good question. I think very honestly, there are pros and cons to this sort of topic. I think when we look at financial services as an industry, there's a lot to be done in terms of, there's an overhaul that I believe needs to happen across the industry in terms of how they address customers, in terms of the types of touch points, in terms of the speed and rate of what they offer in the market, the value propositions they could create. There's still, there are organizations that are going into these new environments and approaching new technologies in an innovative way. But most of the industry is still very much stuck in that kind of traditional environment, the traditional offerings. And then you have the tech companies that are kind of speeding along and delivering, these hyper-personalized experiences and touch points, new capabilities, and people are adopting those capabilities. I mean, if you think about just from the customer base alone, we as FSI customers, we probably get advice from our banks or our insurances every time there's a big change in our life, right? And this is also decreasing when you have a child, or when you buy a house, or when you go into a new studies or new job, you want to have a touch point with your financial services provider. But with the tech companies, we have very strong touch points almost on a daily basis. And these are actually exponentially increasing. We're adopting the technologies, we're integrating it into our lives. So from that perspective, I think banks could, and most financial services industries players could learn from the technology companies in terms of how you engage with customers, how do you deliver value propositions that are different from the existing, and how do you kind of innovate very rapidly. But on the other hand, if I look at what is happening across various technology companies in terms of the core values those companies demonstrate, the way they utilize data, the way they are sometimes not as responsible as we would like them to be as consumers. So I think there we need an additional regulatory focus on these areas. And we don't see regulators being as educated or as quickly educated as we need them to be in order to regulate these new tech environments. So do I think that the banks should operate more like tech companies? I think yes, in terms of value propositions, mindsets, innovative capabilities, kind of explorative environments. But within reason or within limit, I think there still needs to be a good amount of regulatory requirements and responsibility around financial services that has to be demonstrated. So, it's kind of a gray area for me, to be very honest.
Yeah, I mean, I have personally tons of examples where I could make a list of, what I would have wished and expected from the banks that I'm served. And, one of the most recent examples of the lack of service is our son turned 18 and, has gone to college. And the bank where we had an account for children, right? He immediately sent a mail in the post saying that, his bank account that, of course, was with parental, a joint account with the parents, has to be his account and he has to take it over. But then I'm like, wait a minute, nobody contacted me or my husband to say, okay, you have a child that is 18 years old. Where is he or she going to university? What are your needs? He went to another country, to Holland. They could have, suggested for him to open an account there, and to ask us what we are doing for, the funds for his education or our monthly things. Nobody asked anything and nobody suggested anything, which is not, I mean, I'm not talking about rocket science here or any, machine learning, high-tech capability to do this, but it's lacking. And this is a big event. So I didn't feel that they were there for me. They're there for me when I go to them to execute, to send his, monthly allowance or whatever it is. This is just basic examples. And if we go into small business banking, I mean, still the lack of services for gig economy workers and flex workers and small businesses is not there, especially in Europe. I don't know if you run across these problems in your work and you hear this.
I think this is an excellent example that you raised, and it demonstrates perfectly the fact that the customer journey is broken, right? I mean, it's simple things like understanding the lifespan of a customer and where we could make an impact. How do we stay top of mind? And you see other kind of digitally based companies being a lot more proactive in some of these things in terms of recommending services, that are so accurate sometimes that you start to wonder, are they listening to my conversations, and are they around? So I think this is the kind of touch points and kind of service and interactions that we are looking for. We get from other digitally based businesses, and we're starting to demand them from our traditional business touch points as well, like financial services and insurances. I mean, if I imagine my daughter's 11, she's turning 12 this year. And if I just watch the way she's developing and the kinds of things she's doing, I cannot in a million years imagine her going to a bank and opening a bank account when she's 21, right? Her view of the world is completely different. She has friends in New York where they play Roblox games and they exist in the metaverse through the weekend. So that's her best friend, and they're online and they chat, and they're playing games and they have their own environment, their own avatars. And when she wants to do like savings, she asks me questions like, why do I have to open a bank account? She understands concepts around digital wallets. And if I imagine potentially in the future, there might be capabilities being offered where you have a multi-currency wallet that allows us to not just have multiple crypto or digital currencies, but also fiat currencies alongside, and you being able to select, this boundaries between virtual and physical disappearing, where you as a person, as an individual, can select paying with fiat or paying in this environment with virtual currencies, or this kind of business model shifting from business to consumer models, shifting away from that into business to avatar models. And I think these are kind of the explorations that we need to be looking at today as traditional companies. And we do see this already being done by fintechs. But I think this is, for me, an interesting perspective, and I'd like to maybe hear your thoughts on it as well. I don't think it's going to be the big banks that corner this area. I think they're like the Titanic. It takes a long time to turn around or to shift direction. We do see them kind of buying up fintechs or acquiring competitions to kind of get into this space of innovation and converging the market. On the other hand, the fintechs don't have the credibility and the size and the infrastructure, frankly, to serve these masses of consumers beyond what we're seeing today. So there's the convergence that might happen. I think it might be the smaller kind of regional or private financial institutions that could potentially be the most innovative if they have the right mindset towards these technologies and touch points. So they would have the infrastructure, the credibility, the experience in the markets in order to be innovative enough to say, okay, we can start offering a new customer base, a new non-physical environment, and kind of cross beyond what we're looking at today.
It's, you raised the amazing points, with your daughter in Roblox. And, a few years ago, sorry, there is a company, Fintech, in the US that launched a wallet exactly like you described, where you could hold your fiat currencies, you could hold crypto, and you could hold in-game tokens.
Yeah.
And exchange them. This is backed, and it's a subsidiary of the Intercontinental Exchange, ICE. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they didn't really grow in that direction, and I was very excited about it. Now with the metaverse, I'm really thinking that, whatever is going to succeed is going to succeed starting from the social angle, the social platform. Your daughter, as you said, for her, this is where she hangs out. It's her social platform 24/7. And of course, she's in no business at this age, but later it will be her business platform too. So it's whoever manages to create that wallet and the stickiness in that world and links it, maybe Roblox, it may be Epic Games, it may be, I don't know, JP Morgan with Epic Games, or other candidates and collaborations can be. I was thinking that Unstoppable Domains that has, you buy for a lifetime your decentralized, if you
exactly.
want, a website, and that's your wallet, and it's your wallet for everything. Who is going to make my digital identity I mean, Apple Pay, if you think of it, is in a great position right now because in the US only, in that wallet, you can have your digital identity, which is recognized. It's the driver's license there. You can have money, right? Now fiat, and easily they can do a crypto, and you can have other things like invoices, tickets, and so on. So that's kind of a first version of what it should look like, and we'll see who scales.
I mean, I think, Apple is a great example. Facebook is also heading in that direction, where if you look at the integration that Meta is having with the Facebook space, but with Oculus and Libra and so on, I think it's interesting that companies are exploring those directions. No one has really cracked the code yet or gone into, and I think the reason for that is probably because there's still a gap between what the traditional business model environment and this kind of future business model environment, where you can imagine what customers are going to be doing in those spaces. So maybe in behind the scenes, Apple or some of these other companies have already started exploring. It's just not known outside. Or I think it would be interesting to kind of explore that further to see what this business to avatar business models could look like. And for me, it's all about the ecosystem environment. And this is something I do touch about in my book. The two core elements is around the motivation of people across different generations. So we're looking at, my daughter is the Gen Z generation, but we have the generation right after her. She's the last of the Gen Z. We have the alphas coming in as well. And these generation of people, they think very, very differently. The millennials were kind of the trigger towards this new thinking, but these two generations are completely different. So one of the topics I talk about is how do companies engage with these new types of people and customers. And the other topic, of course, is around building an ecosystem. This is the future of business. It's not just about your company. It's not just about what you can offer to customers. So this company to customer interaction, it's also about providers, about partnerships, it's about stakeholders, the ownership of the business, all of these elements, and of course, employees at the core. All of these coming together to build the future business ecosystem. It's a collaborative, co-optive environment rather than a competitive one. And I think what's really interesting, I recently had a conversation with a C-level executive from one of the big banks, and he said that, in the wealth management space, the younger generation, the people taking over from the current group of wealth management customers, they're starting not only to demand for like sustainability and responsible and purpose-driven capabilities, but they're also looking beyond that and looking at, who are the customers of the bank? Is the bank serving sustainable customers? Do they have those types? So it's not just what the business offers, but who are the customers of those businesses? And they're starting to look at the whole ecosystem. Does this entire ecosystem align with my values and my purpose? Which is, I think, a really nice shift in mindset.
Yeah, so really looking, if you're serving a company that is really, I disagree with the practices and so on, I don't want to be in this community, so to speak. It's this mindset of being part of a community, even though it's business, which we didn't have, right? We never thought of, when we're served by some business provider, we didn't think we were in a community.
And I think we had, as the Gen X or the generation before the millennials, we had a completely different value system that was thrust upon us. We were looking for stability. We were told you had to work hard, to have a stable job. We looked at our parents as kind of the foundation and the examples that said, you've got to have a job, you've got to go into the studies. And then we have this new generation of people who say, I don't need to have a 9-to-5 job because I can go out and, start a content creation business or something like that. I mean, you earlier mentioned my daughter. She actually does have her own business. So she creates slime, which is a product that, she can sell to kids. And she makes that at home and sells it. And she created a website that she sells it through. So this is part of the reason why we started talking about financial services. We've created NFTs together as well. were not very successful, but we created them just to learn the process of how it could be created and marketed. So I think
where did you create the NFTs? By the way, which platform? Do you know?
OpenSea.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was very basic. It was the free platform, but I think for me and for her as well, a lot of understanding comes from doing. So, you know, when I wanted to learn about blockchain, I went and learned Solidity. So I think this is the kind of a foundation for us. And so we started sketching and we minted and, you know, created the NFTs. They're still there if you want to go check them out. But I think it's a very, very interesting learning and capability for kids today, and they are thinking beyond the physical space, which is quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean, even for us adults, you know, being in fintech innovation, I follow that mantra that, you know, unless I try it, I won't know what I'm talking about. And I do remember, you know, during the ICO boom, right, in the crypto market, I mean, the only way to really understand what is going on is to get involved in a project, is to get, you know, your MetaMask wallet and try to participate in an ICO so you understand what is going on, how the process works, you know, why it's an awful user experience for now, but you know, you understand the process and the difference of, you know, sending money via a bank or an app like peer-to-peer payment app, or, you know, with a digital wallet. And as you said, even with NFTs, you need to understand what is the wallet that can hold an NFT and what does it mean holding a wallet of an NFT. And from there only you can start sensing the possibilities and keeping your mind open versus criticizing, oh, you know, it's not good user experience, it's not scalable, it's not this. You know, you have to do this. And I love a mantra that Jack Dorsey from Square Block now says. He emphasizes the value of businesses engaging with open source technology like the Bitcoin blockchain, because there's a lot of learnings through engaging and utilizing open source technology for your business. And you can start, you know, experimenting from one part, but the learnings are just, you know, up there. And this, I think, is something that is lacking in financial services. I would say, you know, it's the old thing, there's no R&D, right?
I mean, this is really, really an important point that you mentioned around learning, because I still have conversations with people from FSI industry, the financial services industry, who don't understand blockchain. And I mean, there's hypes in the market, and so Metaverse is now a hype. NFTs, people are talking a lot about these topics. Blockchain has been around for a while, though, and I think a lot of these elements are accelerating because the blockchain, the decentralized technology behind it, is accelerating, and it's so disruptive to financial services. But there are still people who don't understand what it means, what the technology is, where it's going, and how it's developing, and how it's going to disrupt their own industry. And I find this really fascinating because there's so much knowledge about these technologies are decentralized. You can access information so easily to understand. And it's not just decentralized, but it's simplified to a point where it's so easy to understand. If you look, and at this, I find another thing that's so fascinating about the new generation, right? If you go onto Instagram or TikTok, there are so many people who are in financial services who are sharing information in bite-sized content about complex, not just complex financial products and services, like how to trade and, you know, how to build your wealth, personal wealth management and things like that, but also around these new tech concepts that are disrupting the financial services. And they're credible people. They're not just, you know, sharing information, but it's really, you know, so much learning out there that's being shared.
Yeah. I mean, there's true democratization there, right? Of people sharing content and insights and experiences as it is developing. Kamales, we need to talk about your book, which I understand is hitting the market in October.
Yes, 27th October, and it's being published by Wiley.
Wow, and the title is The Human Side of Digital Business Transformation. Tell us why you wrote this book, and who is it for, and what is there a lot about financial services? Is it industry specific? What's in this book?
Definitely. So the motivation for the book, and I have to say the book was in my mind, in my head for many years. And what I've observed over the last 2+ decades of being in this technology and business space is that a lot of focus tends to be on the technology elements, right? The transformation focuses on digital and disruption and what kind of technology should be applied, and the process environment and all of those elements that are kind of tangible. And people forget at the center of everything, at the center of success of digital transformation are people. And so I found this really fascinating when I work with organizations. The change culture element tends to be the last piece that's looked at. It tends to be a nice to have. But I didn't want to write a book about change management. I wanted to write a book about how can an organization go through this entire journey of transformation and address the key elements that are needed for the future of business, while taking the people in the organization, the people in its ecosystem, as well as its customers along this journey for success. So this is what essentially the book is about. It does cover the hardcore digital transformation process or approach that I've applied over the last, I would say 10 years, that's been fairly successful in most organizations that I've used it, or has been successful in all the organizations I've applied it in. And it combines this kind of structured approach with the people element. So understanding motivations, creating a purpose-driven organization, understanding the different generational shifts that are happening, as well as some of the key disruptive technologies. So we go into why these technologies are considered disruptive and what could be the future of these tech in business. And we do address as well best practices for transformation. So my motivation was really to put something out there for business leaders and companies to look at when they need to be to kind of readjust their focus away from just the tech element and think about how you as a company and as people in the organization can leverage tech for success. And I think one of the key conversations I've had recently, someone asked me, digital transformation is, it's been around for like 7-8 years. It's over, isn't it? Most companies have implemented this. And I think what is really daunting is digitalization has happened. Many companies have looked at digitalization for optimization, for innovation, for promotion of their brands and so on. But the people transformation, the leadership transformation, the mindset transformation, that's still a big gap. And so this is what I hope to fill with the book.
Very interesting. So really what you're saying is, let's take a bank that has moved to the cloud completely, and is also, using a chat bot like, I don't know, Erica of Bank of America, that's very successful, or some such, and maybe some other aspects. Also is in partnership with some fintechs in terms of open banking. But even though they've done this, you are saying that it's possible, and more frequently what happens is that the leadership and the managers and the people underneath have not changed their mindset. Is that
they've not changed in a way that is sustainable, or they've focused on the wrong thing when it comes to technology implementation, and they're measuring the wrong things as well in terms of what business success is. You might have shifted to the cloud, but is that where your business will find success in the next 10 years, right? Is it just about applying those technologies, or is it about overhauling the way you think about your business and your environment? So I really go into kind of the leadership transformation elements as well, which is something that I've been on this personal journey of developing my leadership skills. And it does take a lot of looking into yourself as a leader, and sometimes even challenging yourself outside of your comfort zone, right? When you talk about tech, and if we talk about financial services, how many of the leadership team members actually go and explore these technologies and push the boundaries and think outside of their current environment. I think this is something that's necessary for the future of leadership as well.
This is a topic that we could be discussing for hours, no doubt about that. And do you agree that there's a lot of cross-industry learnings, especially for financial services, that have traditionally been fenced in or in walled gardens because of, the regulatory necessity and because of the trust sensitivity element, and they don't tend to take a lot of learnings from other industries? You think that that is something that can help them in the journey of this mindset shift?
Definitely. I think the cross-learning element is applicable for most organizations, looking outside of your own industry and looking outside of your own company to see what else is out there and how other organizations are dealing with similar issues. I think the compliance topic is an important one because it does have a very strong hold on financial services as an industry. But there are other industries that exist within those types of compliance requirements, like pharmaceutical organizations and healthcare and so on, where there is also innovation happening. And so this cross-learning could be very applicable. But when it comes to touch points to customers, you can actually be quite innovative, right? The boundaries within which you can explore is fairly large. And this should be something that I think, individuals in financial services as well as organizations as a whole need to start exploring further. The book itself is not industry specific, but I have some really great examples in there from financial services and interviews with experts in the market as well, like Didier Bonnet, for example, and Tony Saldana. So they've all given me kind of interviews and shared their experiences as well, which I've built into the book content. And so I think it would be a cross-industry experience for people when they read this.
Openness and cross-industry, I think, is very important. While we are all living this transformation from the convergence of these technologies, and as you said, we at the same time need to be reflecting and doing a lot of introspection as to what kind of world we want to create as humans, right? To serve our needs and empower parts of the society that maybe even with these technologies, ironically, we're creating more inequalities and divides, right? Unconsciously. So there's a lot here. Kamales, thank you so much for your insights. I will share with our audience the link for your upcoming book and of course your LinkedIn, so they can follow you on your journey. You are a frequent keynote speaker. You have always a great presence in Davos during the WEF, and you are a major inspiration for women. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was really a pleasure talking to you today.